Hey everybody, it's Tim Higgins here. It's been a while since I've done a video, so I thought I'd kind of put this one together. This one's gonna be a fun one. It may be a long one, so I'm gonna try to move a little bit fast on it. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about using Mongo with TDM. So it's gonna be kind of fun. So let's start with Mongo Compass. Now, if you don't know what this is, if you don't know what MongoDB is, then this video is not for you. Sorry. Because that's kind of going to be the whole scope of this. First thing we do is I'm going to start from scratch. So we're going to create a database, and I went ahead and stuck some names over here. It's just going to make it easier and faster for us because we're going to need these anyway. So my database name is people demo DB, and then we'll just call our collection DB collection, and we'll just create our database. And now what we're going to do is I found this little JSON script somewhere online. Now I apologize. This is probably the second or third time I've started this video. For some reason, my recording software that does desktop isn't really coming in clear these days like it used to, so I may have to just buy something better. But the point is, so this is just a little hello world type people.json file that I found online. So we're going to use that to go ahead and just get started with some data. So we'll just say add data, we'll insert, and we'll grab our people, and we'll say import, and there we go. That should give us at least one person to get us started. Now, let's go to TDM. No, before I even go to TDM, let's go to SQL Server. And what we'll do is just refresh because it should be a database called people. So what we're going to do is we'll just say, not connect, I'm sorry. We'll say new. Well, we need to go down here to databases, new database, because we need a place for TDM to write to this. Now, I know the question is, Tim, what are you doing? So let's give some context. We'll say MongoDB. Well, let's just say SQL. So even though that's SQL, we'll know because we're going to use these in scripts. So let's go ahead and put this over here. So what we're going to do is after we do this, we're going to look at a Javelin job that I created that allows us to export data from TDM. That's going to be this data synthetically created with synthetic data. We're going to export it and then import it into into Mongo. Okay, so let's go ahead and minimize all this, and let's go get started. Where's our TDM? And what we're going to do is we're going to add a project. Again, we're doing all this from total scratch. Besides the Javelin flow. Okay, the Javelin flow will take a little bit, but that's okay. All right, here we go. New project. So we'll call this people Mongo demo. Okay, that way we'll know to delete it later, and we have to have description, so I'll just put that in there and save. Not a good naming convention, but you get it. So while that's loading, I'm going to jump to here into my temp and get this little thing right here ready because we're going to talk about that next. So now that we got our project, let's go ahead and hit close and refresh. Now the one thing, let's see, people, don't think that's it. So like I said, I've done this a few times. So let's try people again. There we go. Obviously I did it before because I had to build it. So we're doing it from scratch so you can see how it works. Now with that, the first thing we're going to do, we don't care about any of this stuff, but we're going to go and we're going to create an object from a JSON file. Now before I do that, let's go back to Compass. And let's actually export this. Now I could use the exact same file that I wanted, but I want to show you kind of a trick here you got to be careful with. If I select fields, do not get your ID field. That is a field that's auto-generated by Mongo. So you don't want TDM to generate that one, okay? But the rest of this is okay. Now there is an employee ID. We're going to use that as our next field, but the rest of it seems to be all right. So now let's know where to put it. Let's call it, let's call it people downloaded. There we go. That way we know to use that. So now we're good there. So let's go ahead and minimize this. And what we're going to do, turns out I got a meeting in 15 minutes. Interesting. All right, so what we're going to do is either speed this up or stop it and then come back. So with that, we got our file. So let's go ahead and register our objects. We're going to say register new. We're going to go to JSON, and we're going to go find our JSON that we just downloaded from Mongo. Okay, it's here. We'll give it a name. So people Mongo. That's good enough for me. And we're going to hit register. I don't think this is UTF-8, but that's kind of standard anyway for JSON files. So we're going to go ahead and click on that. Now that we have this, we're going to click on it. And again, I'm going to try to move a little fast just because Number one, I got a demo, I mean not a demo, I got a meeting here in 15 minutes, and I hate stopping and starting these videos. Number one, it kills the cadence, but number two, it's a nightmare trying to mix all this together. So what we're going to do is look for our database that we created. Oh, you know what? We didn't even create a profile, did we? So let's create a profile, new profile. We'll call it people SQL. Let's call it people Mongo SQL. It's kind of weird, but I'll know what it is. And again, I'm putting the word SQL in there. Well, I don't have to put the SQL in there, but that's okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the video here at this point. And what I really do is I'll pause it. I don't really stop it or I cut it afterwards, but the video is still recording because I know that just goes against what I just said a few minutes ago. But you don't really care about that. But I don't want you to see my password. So, okay, so now I've got the password. It's in my clipboard, so I'm going to go ahead and just do SA in that. The database is going to be whatever this IP address is. So let's go ahead and grab this. I'm lazy. Oh, it doesn't tell me the IP. That's okay. I guess we will have to type it in. I was going to say I'm lazy and I don't want to type, but it's 7428222. So 74. Oops. All right. I'm just not with it today. That's what happens when you try to get rushed. So 74.208.220.204. And the default port for SQL is 1433. The database we're going to use is our people SQL database. So let's make sure I really named it what I said I was going to name it. Well, actually, we're just going to grab it because it will error out if it doesn't exist, right? You know what? I'm lying. Let's just look. I don't want to take the chance. Yep, it's right there. Okay, cool. And it is empty, by the way, just for the record. But let's go ahead and we'll just say database name here. We're going to go down test. Everything should be good. And everything is good. So now what we're going to do is just go ahead and save. So let's see. Well, my meeting is, something's going on with my meeting. I know you don't care, but okay, cool. They canceled it anyway, so we're good. So we can continue without being speedy deedy. All right, so let's go back to our objects now. And if you hear my stomach growl, I'm sorry. It's lunchtime. I'm hungry. So not very professional, but that would be a nightmare to try to cut out of the video, so I apologize about that. But we're going to do people MongoDB. We're not going to import the data, but we are going to look at some of this. So when you're doing a JSON file, don't do foreign key constraints. It just makes it easier. You can do that once you import it in if you need to. Unless you really know those are correct, because that would throw all kind of errors. The biggest thing is that you're looking at is your schema name. We're going to need that, so let's go ahead and grab it. We're going to put it in our handy dandy notebook. Okay, and then over here there's other things you can do. Allow comments, allow single quotes. I kind of just leave all that blank. You can play with this if you want to. Including the duplicate table names, which I know don't have duplicate tables. There's a lot of stuff that you can do right here in this, but I just like to go with the default and just say create. And what that's really doing, if you don't know, it's going to create a schema by this name, and it's going to add those tables to your database. So let's give it a second and we'll go look at that. Now, I will tell you sometimes when you're looking, if you try to look at it through here, through SSMS, the Microsoft thing, sometimes it errors out because the DBO gets changed, right? And that's the default, so it's no longer a DBO. But a lot of times it will work. Just keep that in mind. So if it doesn't, don't panic. Okay, so it's done. Let's see if it errors out. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, then I'll show you a way around it. So let's go ahead and refresh. And then let's go into it. And we got our tables, and we should see namespace. See, they're still not there. So what I do is I use this tool over here by JetBrains, and we hit refresh because that table doesn't exist anymore. We'll go into here. Now this allows me to see all the schemas, even though I'm taking all of them. You'll see this one right here as one of the schemas. Okay, so that's perfect. So now I can go down to it, and I can see my 5 tables right there. Okay, the biggest thing is if you want over here in SQL, what I found works is just keep hitting refresh, refresh the whole thing, refresh the database, the tables, or the instance, and then the databases, and then eventually it will show up. But it's kind of a nightmare. They may be there now. Let's see. but you'll see a schema. No, see, they're still not even there. So don't panic. They are there. They're just DBO is the default schema. So it kind of freaks out on you. But the biggest thing too is if you close it and reopen it, you'll be fine. But here I can see here because this allows me to see my schemas. So we have these these tables that were generated for us. We're not going to look at them here. We will go over here and look at them here when we create data. So one of the things that when you look at your objects, the one thing that TDM knows that you're going to want to do automatically is create a generator because this is empty, right? So let's go ahead and create a generator. Oh, you know what? Let me hit the back button because I want this object ID. I can get it from here. So these are things that you're going to want. You can get them at the end. You'll see what I mean when we get to it. But object ID, oops, equals, there we go. The Javelin takes all these as parameters, okay? Just keep that in mind. But what we want to do, let's go back over here and let's go ahead and generate some data, okay? I'm not going to spend a lot of time doing this, but make people. Okay, and then let's go ahead and hit save, and that's going to generate our people for us. We'll go in here, and then, oh, tables aren't there. So what you do in this case is you go back and you refresh, and then they will show up. Okay, so what we're going to do is I noticed that there was an error. So people Mongo 2, and let's go get our downloaded file. We can do this from scratch, and we'll say register. And then, so notice we have 2 now. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this one. We're going to change our profile. Now this is going to have a different schema, so it's okay if you have multiple in the same schema. So let's go to people. And oh, see, that's why, because I stuck it in the wrong schema. There we go. So that would explain a lot. Yeah, it should go here. So that was the problem with me doing it before. But what we're going to do is just go ahead and do this. Let's grab this schema instead. Okay. And what we'll do is just post that one right there and get rid of the JSON name. And that should create this one for us. My bad. Sorry. Okay. That's what happens when you rush things. But it's only because I used a different connection string. So now if we go back over here and look, see these 2 failed. This one's running. And it's running, and it's running, and it's running, and it's running, and it's running. That's a good sign because that means it's generated. So it's complete. So now if I go look and we get our people SQL Mongo thing, let's go and refresh and tables, and there we go. So that's what I was looking for. Notice the namespace underscore. So kind of in a way I lied. If you see a boo-boo, see it popped up automatically. Nope, that's not it. So if you see a boo-boo, take the time to figure out what it is. Sometimes it does take time for it to show up. Yeah, see, so it's throwing an error over here. That's fine. So what we're going to do, because that no longer exists, that's why we created a new one. So that's why refreshing is so important. So if we go down to, we should see our people, but we don't really care because we got it over here. All right, so in fact, let's close this and I'll refresh that part of the database later. Now we have something here, so let's go do something with it. Where we have objects. So we created our object, and we have 2. This one errored out because we were pointing to the wrong namespace. This one works just fine, so we're going to click on this one. We're going to say create generator, and now we're going to say create. I like using underscore for names. It's kind of a programming thing. Create people 2. Okay, there we go. And then we're going to say save. All right, and then we're going to go to our generator. Now this piece, now you see the tables that it was showing up in the SQL database. So we'll click on these. The key is, you'll see them in a few seconds, is some of these have to do with how the shredder works. Now if you don't know where the shredder is, that's the way we used to do XML and all that in the background, and it still kind of uses that concept, but you'll see what I mean. So we have these links. Notice these automatically filled in, or these variables I should say. So for our shred group ID, we're going to use our publish ID. That's a way that we can track what's being published. So we'll say publish job ID, And this is very tricky, but we're going to try to copy this, and we're going to fill this in all of our shred groups, okay? So we'll put one there, we'll put one there, we'll put one there, and we'll put one there. Okay, and so the next one are these OBN connections and this personal shred, well, and this root as well. So we just want to make sure all these connect. These are pretty common sense. We're going to connect that to the column of the root, which is this little thing right here. So root TDM, we want to connect it to our shred ID, and we want column 1. And then here, this is going to be personnel. So we'll go to our columns, we'll do personnel, and again, it's going to be the shred ID. And go ahead. We're generating one, the first column, so we're good there. And then here, this is going to be the OBN. So let's go ahead and go down to it. OBNA. And it wants the shred ID 1. And again, we're just going to copy this one because the one right below it is using it as well. So, and paste. There we go. So now the rest of this is just kind of data generation. For an example, here I can use a next. Okay. Postal code, state, and city has this really cool function. So we're going to go to the painter, and you'll see what I mean. Again, this is just data generation. I have plenty of videos out on this. If you know, hopefully you've seen those. And then we'll go down to our seed list with a column. Okay, not connection, seed list with a column. And then there's actually one. It doesn't. Let's try city maybe. It's hard to find. Okay, so here it is. So city, state, and zip. So we'll go ahead and grab that one. 0 nulls, and this is our postal code. So 1, 2, 3, 3 on this one. And let's go ahead and validate that. And while that's validating, I'm going to go ahead and copy that. It's just a shortcut, right? Okay, good enough for me. So insert state is, it's not RAIA based, so it's 1, 2. And then city is going to be, I think, 1. Yes, 1. Now there is, oops, 1. There isn't one for street address, but we do have a function for that. So if we do seed list, let's go ahead and do a find. It's just going to be the normal seed list. So I don't want the one with a column, so it'll be this one. Okay. And then here, I think there's, yeah, address line 1. There we go. Let's make sure there's 0 nulls here at the beginning, because that's to run error if we don't. So we'll just say 0 for that one, and we're good to go. All right, so now the rest of this is pretty common sense. Age, we'll just do a random number, right? So let's do the painter so I can see a little bit better. We'll do numeric, we'll do random number. I don't really remember what it is, so I kind of have, I think it's random value maybe. Yeah, nope, not that one. Random range. Well, is that what I really would want? Yeah, that's fine. So here, come on, there it goes. Oops, I did it twice. Let's get rid of that one. Here they have to be between the ages of 18 and we'll say 65. I don't know what this app is for. I didn't create it, but as long as it falls within that range, we're good. Now you want to make sure that it's a random range, not random, I think it's digit or whatever, because I don't want 18 characters, right? So let's go ahead and save. Gender, we'll just do a list here. I'm going to do this one so I can say it bigger. Let's go ahead and just say list, and we're going to do a list of string arrays. So we'll say 0, and for kicks and giggles, we'll just keep this stupid simple, and we'll say female, comma, male, and for those that don't want to fill anything in, we'll say other. Oops, not 0, other. Okay, and that should be fine. You should validate, make sure I don't have any boo-boos there. And we're good, so I'm going to say insert. And then name, we know that there's a seed list for name. Let's grab this one, because I can just post that in there. And we'll just say first name here. And then there's a space. You know what? Let's get it to where it's bigger so we can see it, right? Because then I'll do a space last name. But let's just make sure we have enough real estate here. Okay. And then what we'll do is we'll put last name here. Okay. And that should give us a first name, last name. Make sure I don't have any boo-boos since I was typing that little small box. Perfect. Okay. Insert. And I think that, oh, we got these departments. I don't really remember what a department is. What's the department? Okay, so like finance, IT, HR, that kind of stuff. So we'll go back over to our list where we did the male and female right here. Let's copy this. Stick that right there. What was the first one? We'll just use it as a finance. Okay, so we'll put that one in there as finance, and then maybe IT, right? Because I'm an IT guy. IT, we'll do another one for HR. and then O for other. Well, we'll just type out other because the rest of them are typed out anyway. Destination is kind of weird, or it's not destination, is it? So we're going to grab this. Deputy General, I'm going to assume everybody's going to have that title because I don't really care. Okay, so that's kind of it. Now, the most important thing is we have our published job ID, so we can see what job's been published. And you'll see that, especially in the database, it's a good place to look for that one. We have all of our shred IDs linked, which is perfect. So let's just go ahead and publish and see what we get. So I'm going to publish to my database. So we're doing people Mongo SQL, not DB. I think I'll delete that. So, and then here we'll notice we have a different schema, right? The 5414, not DBO. That's very important. And I just want to make sure that is the one we're using, and it is. Okay. And then what we're going to do, we'll repeat it twice. Just keep it stupid simple and publish. Now, I didn't do a source because we're generating data. I'm not looking at any data. But let's give it a second. I want to take a sip of my coffee. Refresh, 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 refresh. You're only generating 2. Refresh. But there's a lot of links, right? There's a lot of relationships. So refresh, refresh, refresh. Refresh, refresh, refresh. There we go. Now it's done. So I could look at the log, but the truth is I just want to go look at the data. So let's hit refresh. And if we go in here and look, we'll see a namespace underscore table name. Let's go and look at this one first. Personnel and select. And this will have some data. All right, we're good. So notice this shred ID, this group ID, okay? We'll talk about that because that's very important. Notice these are a little bit different, right? But they all link, I think, back to this one. Anyway, there's a link that you can follow and say, oh, okay, I get it, I get it. But this is not what this is about, okay? But, yep, okay, cool. We got some addresses. We're good. So what we want to do now, we got some data generated. If you go to objects, and we'll go back to our object, so we click on this one. And then if you go to download this, you have a lot of options. First of all, we have our connection profile, which we talked about. We have our schema, our number of files. If I leave this blank, it's going to get all these files, okay? If I publish a job, it's going to create whatever I say to create, like, you know, publish to. But what it's going to end up doing, well, it'll publish to because that's what our default publish was, because I put a publish ID in there. But what it would do at that point was I would get all 4. So I don't know how to say only give me the last 2. Let me rephrase that. I don't know of an easy way of doing it. So I'm probably going to go change the script a little bit to do that. I think I'd have to query that first, then like kick off the generator first, get those IDs, and then pass those into here. So I don't know how to dynamically fill that in with the publish that it's doing at that time. And you'll see what I mean in a few seconds. So we're going to use a single file. We'll give it a base name of JSON. No, let's see. We'll call it people, right? People TDM export. Okay. And we'll go ahead and grab this name because we're going to use this. In fact, you're going to use everything on that. So TDM, let's do file name, and that equals that. Okay. So, and then all these other things are kind of optional. I like to use pretty pink, pretty print, not pretty pink. You know, single file because we're taking it into Mongo. And then again, here's the key. Well, let's go ahead and publish so you can see what it does. Okay, so the publish wants to know what generator are you using and how many files are you going to publish. So we'll go ahead and publish 3. So that will give me a total of 5. But when I do my download, I'm going to get all 5. I won't get just the last 3. And that's what I was talking about. So let's go ahead and export. So there may be a follow-up video if I find an easy way of doing that. But all this is in these APIs. Okay, so that's whenever we do the JSON, we're using these APIs. Now my APIs look kind of weird. I don't really care because I'm smart enough to know what it's doing. But we're going to use this export API, and here are all the options. Okay, all these options are on that page. Okay, so let's go look at our what we just did. So if I go to submit a request, that was a generator. Oops, not a model, a generator. Okay. Oh, so maybe it was a modeling. Yeah, I'm sorry, it's a modeling. So here, because it's an object, so here it's doing two tasks within this one group job, if you will. The first one's doing a publish. Okay, so it just finished publishing that data, and now it's going to create the export file. If I look here, we've got 2. If I run it, I should have 5, right? Because I generated 3, but I had 2 to begin with. Now, if I go look, let's refresh. It should be about done, as long as there's no errors. Now, if I go download this and look at it, I'm now got 5. So if we count the employees' IDs, 1, 2. So there's no easy way to collapse to the employee ID, so let's just do it this way. It's one of the reasons I like Visual Studio Code, is it's really good with handling JSON files. Here we go. So I got 5. I mean, the employee ID will tell you, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I didn't get just the last 3 that I published, right? Now, the other trick too is if you don't put a published job, you'll get the same thing, okay? Anyway, sorry, something caught my attention. All right, so what I mean by that is if I go back here, and if we do objects, and we go ahead and act like we're going to download one of these. Now, if I just download and I'll put a document ID, I will get all 5. Or, now that I've got 2 different publishes, I got this publish and this publish, I can use this publish ID, we'll put it right there, and export without publishing, and give it an hour. Just kidding, it doesn't take that long. But give it a few minutes. Notice I don't have a group anymore because we're not doing the publish with our download. We're just doing the download. So let's give it a few minutes. It shouldn't take that. Oh, there it is. So now if I click on it and we open it up, I get 3, right? So here's, it's going to give me the 3 that were deployed with that 1. 1, 2, 3. Because I told it to use this ID, I'm getting these 3. So that's kind of how the shred ID, job ID kind of thing works. It is very interesting to the point that like you got to be careful because depending on what you download, depending on what you choose, you could get more data than you actually wanted. But if you're careful, you can get, 2 or the last 3. Another thing you can do too is you can do the generator, publish the data, and then go download the file based off the job ID. But anyway, so let's get back to what we're doing. So now that I hope you understand, get a good grasp of how this download works, because it's very important. Okay, and this goes for anything. It's not just Mongo. This is downloading the JSON files, what this is doing. These JSON files. Okay, so let's go, well, this data to a JSON file. So let's go next. Next, we're going to automate this process. Okay, now in automating this process, you need to understand how this works. So I have a folder called temp, and in the folder of temp is TDM to MongoDB. Now I have everything laid out here that's going to do the work. First of all, I have Javelin, okay, that we're going to look at in a few seconds. The Javelin is going to call these batch files. We'll talk about those in a few minutes. Those batch files are going to use a curl command, and they're going to use this Mongo import to do the import. Okay, and what's going to happen is in those batch files, we're going to generate some INI files. If you don't know INI files, it's just a Windows config file. It's a key value dictionary with an equal sign as your delimiter. Not a big deal. And then what that's going to do is download the data. Now the data, as you saw, is downloaded as a zip, so we have to run something to unzip it before we upload it. So the magic behind all this is really these batch files. So the first one to run is going to be the get TDM object. So let's go ahead and look at that. I should be able to open it up in code. Here we go. So what that's going to do is going to read the INI file. Now this is hard-coded. I hate that it's hard-coded. Shame on me. I should never use hard-coded paths. The reason I did it though is because when I'm testing this, I can run this on my command line and it works just fine. It wouldn't know where to go unless you put the path in there. Now, what's saying that it's going to read these files, and we're going to talk about these here in a few minutes once they're created, and it's going to bring in all this information. That's a lot of information. But that information is actually used for this curl command, okay? Now, this is pretty ugly, but what it's going to do, it's going to call this, at the end of the file, it's basic post command. You have to accept everything because you're downloading a zip. Most people see JSON, right? So it's like accept JSON. This you want to accept everything. The header you're going to pass in your token file. I'll show you a shortcut for getting that. And then of course your output is whatever path that you pass it in. Now again, those are going to be created in the INI files, and we'll look at those. Now, one way, I hate to use this tool, but if you go to Postmon, you can see what these variables are. These variables really came from your Swagger. That's what these are. Okay, and I put in as much as I can to make this dynamic. But you can also run it in here and get your data back. So if I look at my parameters, these are the parameters. So what is the base file name? What is the document group ID? You know, none of this works, right? Because this is where I was building this out. But you'd want to replace all this, right? Job ID, number of files, pretty print, you know, that kind of stuff. So let's go ahead and close this. If you want it to work in here, you pass your token in through the authentication. Make sure you put those parameters in, but those parameters, you know, they're just up here, right? So this is basic HTML stuff. And then what you would do is you would just say send, and you would save and download, and that would show you your file. Okay, so let's go ahead and close that. Let's go back over here, and let's look at the next one, the next few. Let me close some of these. Those are the downloads. So the next one is going to be an unzip because it comes down as a full file. Again, it just reads an INI file to know where to put things. It's going to use PowerShell, but since all this is running on Windows, all Windows should have PowerShell. So we expand the archive, we pass in where the zip path is, and then we pass where we want it. Here's an example of that, right? So once it's unzipped, then the magic happens. We're going to load it into Mongo, and this can be kind of tricky depending on your connection string, okay? Now, here, same thing, we have a different settings file for Mongo. So I have one for TDM, and I have one for Mongo. That way they're separate, okay? And what that's, only thing it's passing is the Mongo URL, the database name, the collection, the file that I want uploaded. Type is going to be a JSON because that's what we're bringing down. And JSON array allows you to have multiple files in one. So if I look at this one, see this means it's an array. If you have that and you don't have this set, then it will error out. But then again, to trade off, if you try to send in one and it doesn't have that, it will error out. So that, you know, that's the key to that. Okay, and I put the link in here too, but you can always Google that too. Just Google database tools, Mongo import. And as you can tell, we CD into where the third party is, and we just run it through the command line, and that's all you have to do. It's really not hard to use that tool. Now, the very last one is a cleanup. Not a big deal there. It's just the fact that this is Windows. It doesn't like files on top of files, especially two files with the same name can't be in the same place. So I go into the config files, I delete all of them, I loop through and delete them. And the same thing with the data, we delete the data so we can run it again. Now, let's go look at the Javelin, because that's what's really doing the magic. And it's not really, it's really just an orchestrator in this point. So with it, this is all it is. So I like to keep my Javelin clean, nice, things in categories and things like that. Most of the magic happens right here inside your variables, okay? So let's get some real estate for the variables. I tried to keep the variables at scope. These are kind of screwed up at the beginning because they're everywhere. But version 12 of this app or whatever it is, this should be cleaned up because this is only used in one place, which is inside here. Even if I try to change the scope to put it in there, it errors out because obviously I have references somewhere else. Now this working folder, the concept of that, which I didn't put in place, was instead of having this hard-coded up here, it would be this path right here, right? And then you just tell it where you are from there, okay? But anyway, that is what it is. So all these kind of work the same. I like to keep things stupid simple. For those who have seen in my videos, I use the KISS method, which really is called KISS, KISS, It's supposed to be keep it simple, stupid. What am I missing? Oh, keep it, duh, it, I. Okay, sorry. Long day, need more coffee. Keep it simple, stupid. All right, so first thing we do is create our load file. And what this is doing, these are two little cool commands that, that are part of the extensions. And what they will do is if I give it the base URL and my username, I did have the password down here. You can encrypt the password by coming up here and saying encrypt value, but I didn't do that for show and tell reasons. And don't worry about trying to steal my stuff. This is in Azure. I restart the server, and when I restart it, the IP addresses change. Okay, not a big deal. But right now we're looking at base, my user, I just write it out. And now we're going to look at getting the project ID and the project version because we need those. So what I'm going to do, what I did for the most cases is, notice this is create load file. That's our schema here. Our scope. So what we're going to do is kind of go through and change some things. First thing is the project name. Okay. What is our project name? I think it's pretty close to the same, right? People Mongo demo. It is. Okay, interesting. Not that. What's the look of that, huh? So we minimize that. We need our object. Remember we grabbed our object ID over here, 5513, 5513. Our base file name. Person demo is fine. That's what we call the this right here. File name export. It's okay. We could use it too. I don't really care. That one's fine. But what is important is the group ID. We don't need a group ID. But I'm going to go ahead and just do this example we did where I pass in the 3. Okay, well, you know what? Let's do this one first because that's only 2. So let's go here. I mean, I could do the 3 too, but the reason I did that is because I was keeping the numbers consistent. 1, 2, and then 3, 4, 5, right? So group ID is going to be the same as the job ID. So that's convenient, okay? And then what we export multiple files is false. Remember, all these come off that one page, okay? So if you don't know what something is, just come over here and look, okay? Or come over here and look at the wisdom. So generator ID. So if we're using a generator, which I'm probably going to use I may use the generator. It's fine. We'll figure it out. So if I go look at my generators, I have a generator ID called 3429. If I click on it, it should put it in my URL. It did, so we'll grab that. That way I don't have to worry about fat fingering. Number of files is 2, so we'll probably end up getting maybe 5 this time. Remember that whole confusion about will it get everything, but it won't get just the 2 that I generated. That's the piece I need to figure out. Pretty print, I say true so we can open it up. TDM profile name, now that's important, but we stuck it over here, right? That's the schema, that's the profile name. Because remember I messed up the first time. It's going to be a massive cutting for that part of the video because it took me a few minutes to realize what I did wrong. Publish files, true. That means it's going to generate new files, okay? That's what this one right here is. Whenever we go back to objects, and I know I'm clicking around, but this is a video. You can rewind, pause. I'm just trying not to make it last 3 days, right? Because it could be a very long video. Publish files, true. Okay, that's what that is. Now, export destination, that's going to be our path. My Mongo connector, if you don't know where that is, then the easiest way for me to do that is I close Mongo, I go in, and it's going to be right here. So you click on it, say edit, and then grab it, and then that's where that is. Now, I will tell you, if there's an TLS equals whatever at the end, that was a big gotcha because there's 2 equals, and it breaks the string. So I had to concatenate that in the code. So just keep in mind, if you have more than 1 equals, let me phrase that, if you have any equals in this URL, it's going to break the INI file. The INI file will work. It's just reading the INI file, it gets confused with which equals to use. So that you kind of have to concatenate. And the other thing too was, this is one of the reasons I'm using an INI file is because this gets really confused being passed to a batch file. It's just a nightmare trying to get through that thing. The other thing too is if you put question marks, blah at the end, then it wants to end on the backslash. So just keep that in mind too. But I don't know how to get out of that. So let's just close it. Oh, you know what? Maybe if I turn this off. Nope, that broke it. Oh, hope I didn't break my connection. Well, if I did, it's right here. So cancel, close. Let's see what happens. Open. and here. Okay, it put it back, I think. Connect. We're about to find out, aren't we? Yeah, okay, cool. We're back. All right, so so that's good. And those we just checked. We're good with those. All right, so that's pretty much it. Now, if you ever want to know, you can always export these variables, right? Test, this will give you a CSV file. I had issues trying to upload this once I exported it, but you can at least export it, look at it like this, and fill them out, okay? But that's pretty much all you need. I try to name this like Mongo starts with Mongo, TDM starts with TDM. Your batch file will have the word batch file in it. If it doesn't have the word batch, then it's just a file. TDM export destination path, okay? And that's pretty much it. So let's go ahead and save this. And then what I want to do is go over here. The next thing it's going to do is going to create the file. And it's going to append all those settings to this file. Most of these are pretty common sense, but I'll show you the last one because the other ones are just like it, just not as full. Well, no, this one's fine. So that's the path, sorry. Let's see, this one's got all the stuff in it. So if I look at it, here we go. So it's just the object name equals parameter name, and make sure you put a new line at the end, okay? That's all that is. Let's see, what else? So once this is created, okay, it's going to go into this export, and then here, best practice, we have just a log, tells me when it started and a time, but then it just calls the batch file. Nothing magical there, okay? So export TDM batch path, that's going to be this one right here, okay? So that's really all that is, and then of course I'll log to say that it's complete. If you look at all these others, they're exactly the same way, to where this one's only executing this batch file because it's just unzipping it. The batch file should be here, unzip data batch file. And then if we go back up, we got our Mongo. The Mongo is the another one. It creates a load file, right? And that's going to basically append everything. Since there wasn't a lot of settings, I kind of did it all in one push. Unlike the other one, I broke it down a few. So that's that. And what's down here? What's that there? That was an accident, so let's get rid of our accident. Okay, that's gone. All right, so that creates the INI file. And then we load it into Mongo to where this is doing the same thing. It's just calling the batch file, which is going to be the load Mongo batch file. And then the very last thing we're going to do, which I'm going to break, is just a cleanup log, cleanup by calling the batch file, cleanup.bat, and then it tells me it's complete. So what I'm going to do though is I'm going to break this one just so we can see it get complete without deleting the file, so you can see what they look like, and we're going to try to run it. It may or may not work. So let's give it a try. The reason I say that, it wouldn't work if some of my parameters are wrong, but here's my token. I should see 3 DOS commands, 1, 2, 3. Okay, that happened really fast. I would have saw 4th if this one came up, but let's go see what happened. So if we go over here and look, we should have our batch files. Oh no, I'm sorry, the batch files never go away. We got our config files, so let's look at these. So here's, let's see if I can look at it inside code just because it looks better. So here's the TDM one, right? So these are all the settings. Again, if you have this file, you can run the batch file through your command line, just so you can debug. It's one way of doing it, okay? I'm not going to go through here to verify these, but they're all there. And then the Mongo one, that's all, it looks good to me, okay? So now let's go over here and see if we have data. We have data, it did not unzip. And usually when this happens, that means there's an error. So that does mean one of our parameters are bad. So let's go ahead and delete this. And let's go back and look at our parameters and see if we messed something up. So project ID, that should have been auto-generated, but let's go look. So project ID, the easiest way to get that is from your Javelin. So if we go over and look, because that's what the very first thing right here does, is grabs the ID for the, I don't know if we put in the right name for that project. I think we did, but it looks like People Mongo. Yeah, I guess we did. So, so here is our project People demo. That's the token. The return value is going to be here, project ID 34422. So let's look, see what we got here. And the good news is you get to see me debug this, which helps you kind of understand what it's doing as well. So our version ID is 3423, which is there. Project name, version 1.0. Our object ID, that's very important to make sure it's right. So if we go look at our object, we got our object 55. Oh, so that's our problem. We're using the wrong object. So let's go back over here and let's go to our object ID. I'm not sure why I got that one instead, but let's try it again. So hit save. Now, since I'm doing it this way, though, we have to go manually delete those other things. So let's go ahead and close those two, just so we don't get any errors. I'm just going to close everything because none of this is important. Okay, we'll leave the people up. Just, I don't know why. No, I'm not going to close it. All right, so but what I'm going to do is go in here. I'm going to delete my config files, just so there's no overwrite errors. And so I already deleted the data. And let's just try it again. Okay, so I'm going to run it as verbose logging. And give it a second as I take a sip of my coffee. So the fact that the DOS commands stayed a little bit longer is a good sign. There we go. So it worked. So it was just we had the wrong project ID. And what that did was that exported this file as a generator. We got 1, 2, and since I told it that generator ID, we only got these 2, which is great because that's what I wanted. I might have said on the video that when it does the publishing, you only get those 2. That's not true if you put in the group ID. Now, it still publishes the other ones, execute, but you still only get, well, it won't publish them because I put in the shred ID, no matter what you do. If you leave the shred ID out, it will still publish them and you'll get all those files. So that's where it gets kind of tricky. And that's what I kind of need to put my head around a little bit more. So I'll probably do a follow-up video on this because to me, things don't really seem to add up sometime. What I would hope is that I would tell it to generate new data and then I would just get the latest data. But in this case, you don't. You get whatever the shred ID is. Now, if you don't put the shred ID, it does generate that data, but then you get all the files, right? So I hope you follow that. Now, with seeing that, we ran it all the way through. So let's do a refresh. And we get our people database, our collection. Oh, it looks like it didn't save to our collection. So let's see what happened there. Because I would expect 3. So that would have been inside this other one. So let's look at it. And I might have broke my connection string. Good news is I've got it everywhere, so we can look at that. So my DB is first, people demo. Oh, that's wrong. That's why. Holy smokes, Batman. What happened here? All right, so let's grab that. Let's put that there. So let's go modify this. All right, you guys are watching this. You should have told me the right thing. And you know I'm kidding, right? So we'll go up to here. Let's look for our Mongo settings, which are here. And what we need is our people demo DB for our database. I just totally dropped the bomb on this. I did not know. I must have looked at the wrong one, but there we go. And then here, oh, you know what? I probably looked at an old file, but that's okay. People collection. Yeah, I did. My bad. I didn't update that. That's okay. Or maybe I did. I don't know. Who cares? So our collection is this one. It's just people collection. All right, there we go. That should work. Now let's go and delete everything and run it again. So let's get rid of our config files. Now, when you're doing this, don't delete your batch files. Delete your config file and delete your data because those are the things that are generated. Okay. Anything that's generated, you have to delete. Now let's go ahead and hit save, and then we'll run a verbose logging, and then we'll see what happens. 1, and the fact that it takes longer, that's a good sign. 2 and 3, that one moved pretty quick, but let's just see what happens. All right, so we got 1, and we still haven't got 1. All right, come on now, what happened? I bet you my connection string's wrong. So let's go look at that. I'm looking for the INI file. It's right here. All right, so first of all, let's make sure our data is good. Yep, data is good. Okay, and then we go into here and let's look at our config file. And I bet you that is wrong because everything. Oh, you know what's wrong? So here's the file name. Here's the other gotcha, and I know how to populate this I shouldn't have deleted that, but I need to put this into the code because I have this file hard-coded. Now, we don't have to hard-code this file because what it is that file name that you told it plus the job ID. Okay, that's the error because it can't find that file. So when I was first doing this, I hard-coded that, obviously, and then I realized that I was wrong because it wants to know what file it is. See, it's looking for the wrong file. Now, again, this file isn't too hard to populate. Oops. Let me see what it is. Well, that's okay. We can get it from here. It's going to be file name, which is this, plus whatever the job ID is. Okay, so this, okay, that's correct there, but the job ID is not correct. So job ID is 1421. So I really need to dynamically create that file because that's a big gotcha. Okay, let's go ahead and hit save. Just make sure I did it right. And again, there's a lot of moving parts to this, so it's kind of good that it is broke, even though this is probably going to be like a 2-hour video. Because you see how to debug it, you kind of get, the more you see it boo-boos, the more it makes sense, if that helps. And this right here will work, so just run it through unless I just renamed that file wrong again. But keep that in mind, that file name is important. The idea is you set that file name once, and you probably never have to do this again because the whole point is to automate this process. So let's go in here and hit refresh, and look at that. Now we got our 3 data. We got the original one, I can tell by the imp ID, and then we got the 2 that we created. Now, just to prove a point, we will do this one real quick. And that one shouldn't take as long, but it is important that we go in here and we change these parameters so you see how that works. First thing is I'm going to go and change that file so I don't forget. This is going to be this job ID, okay? And then up here we're going to look for our job ID, which is here, and it's also going to be the same as our group ID. And if you look in the database, that's what it matches, okay? We did that because that's why we did the generator, right? So let's go ahead and save. And this time what I'm going to do, though, is just to prove a point, I'm going to add the last one back, which should clean it up so you can run it again. So let's go manually delete these. But no config files. Okay. And now we're just going to make sure you save because Javelin's funny like that. And then just run it. And as long as we've got the numbers correct, these parameters correct, then everything should work. So that takes a while to run, which is good, perfect. And okay, and we saw 4 pop-ups. Let's go verify our folders first. Okay, cool, nothing there and nothing there, so at least the cleanup worked. Let's go see if we have, we should have 3 more. So 3 should have a total of 6, and we do, perfect. So 1, 2, well, 3 didn't go in order, but that's okay. 3, 4, and 5. So that's it. So that's a lot of moving parts. The Javelin was kind of a gotcha, but the secret to Javelin is very simple. It just creates the INI files. I did that because trying to pass all this in through a parameter to a batch file was a nightmare. So I wrote it to a file, and then that's all this does. And then it reads the file, and this batch file reads the file and executes it, the API. And then the same thing with the Mongo, it does the same. The only catch is to make sure your file, your variables are correct. But that's really not hard. If in a real world, you would do something like this, and then now I can come in here and modify them this way, and I can actually see them a little bit better, and it makes it more sense because this is what people are used to looking at, even though realistically, that's what this down here is too. So anyway, so I hope this was helpful. Again, there's not really a connector for Mongo, but that doesn't mean you can't use it. Okay. Reach out to me if you have any questions. Thank you.